Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everyone, and thank you for joining me once again on this incredible journey into the world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and unbelievable discoveries that could be sitting right in your pocket change at this very moment. And today we are diving deep into one of the most mind-blowing stories in modern numismatics. A story that revolves around a humble little copper coin that most people overlook every single day, but that has shocked collectors, stunned experts, and completely changed the way treasure hunters look at old pennies, because we are talking about the astonishing 1972 1-cent coin, a coin that many people once believed was ordinary but that has proven again and again that it can be worth as much as $6 million thanks to its extraordinary errors, mistakes, production anomalies, striking variations, die issues, and rare misprints that came out of the US Mint during a time when mass production and aging equipment combined in a perfect storm to create some of the most spectacular error cents ever found. And as we go deeper into this discussion, you will see exactly why this coin has captured the imaginations of collectors all over the world, why treasure hunters scour rolls of pennies day after day searching for the right details, and why the 1972 1-cent has become one of the most talked about coins in the hobby. Because what makes it special is not just one error, not just one accidental defect, but an entire range of possibilities that make this coin one of the most unpredictable and fascinating pieces to ever leave the mint. And understanding how these errors happened, what they look like, and why collectors value them so highly is what will help you recognize whether the 1972 penny in your own collection or hiding somewhere in your change jar might actually be worth life-changing money. So let's begin by exploring one of the most famous and valuable mistakes connected to this year, the legendary doubled die obverse, a dramatic visual doubling seen especially in the inscriptions like Liberty, Indiana, God We Trust, and the date itself, doubling so bold and clear that even someone with no experience in numismatics could recognize it instantly. And this doubling was created when the die used to strike the coins shifted slightly between impressions during the hubbing process, causing the letters and numbers to appear almost shadowed or duplicated. And this type of error is so prized because it is not random damage from circulation, not environmental wear, not a scratch or dent, but a legitimate mint production flaw created before the coin ever touched another surface, making it a genuine collectible error and not just a damaged coin. And within the world of doubled dies, the 1972 variety is considered one of the most dramatic and visually striking, leading collectors to pay massive premiums for examples in high grade, meaning coins that were preserved with minimal wear. But the doubled die is just the beginning when it comes to the 1972 cent, because multiple varieties exist, including minor doubled dies, rotated dies, off-center strikes, misaligned die strikes, copper planchet irregularities, clipped planchets, brockage errors, die cracks, cuds, repunched mint marks on certain Denver issues, over-polished die areas that remove details, and even coins struck on foreign planchets by accident, possibilities that all contribute to why a seemingly tiny and unimportant 1-cent piece can suddenly skyrocket in value and become a treasure worth millions. And when collectors talk about the $6 million valuation, they are referring to a perfect storm scenario, a flawless or nearly flawless example of the boldest and rarest double die variety, preserved in pristine condition, showing exceptional clarity of the doubling, having no post-mint damage, and existing in a grade so high that perhaps only one or two coins in the entire world qualify. And when rarity combines with demand, history, error magnitude, and condition, values climb into the stratosphere. And this is exactly what has propelled the 1972 cent into the ranks of multi-million-dollar coins, because imagine you have a coin with a dramatic error, only a tiny handful of them exist in the highest possible grades, collectors everywhere desperately want one. And the coin comes from a year admired by numismatists for its large production variations and error potential. All of this makes the 1972 cent a perfect formula for astronomical value. And as we continue exploring this incredible topic, we also need to talk about the circumstances during the early 1970s that led to this explosion of error coins, because this period was one where the US Mint was transitioning equipment, dealing with worn and aging dies, facing tremendous production pressure, and experimenting with different metal planchets due to fluctuating copper prices. And these conditions often resulted in mistakes like misaligned hubs, repeated hub impressions, incorrect striking pressures, accidental striking of leftover planchets from previous years, and design distortions that collectors search for today. And the 1972 double die is a direct result of that chaotic environment. but something else that makes this particular year fascinating is the sheer number of recognized double die varieties, over 10 different types. And while only one or two of them exhibit the extremely bold doubling that fetches breathtaking prices, even the minor ones can bring in hundreds or thousands depending on condition, which encourages collectors everywhere to check every single 1972 penny they own, because you never know which variety you might have unless you look closely under magnification. And as we continue discussing these errors, we should also explore the wide array of striking mistakes that push the value of this coin even higher, like off-center strikes where the design is shifted so far that a portion of the coin is blank, or broad strikes where the collar failed to hold the coin in place during striking, creating a wider and flatter cent that looks unusual to the naked eye. And then we have die cracks, which appear as raised lines caused by fractures in the die, and cuts, where a piece of the die breaks off entirely and leaves a raised blob of metal on the coin, all of which can add value, especially when combined with other errors. And this stacking of errors, such as a double die with a dramatic die crack or an off-center strike combined with a clipped planchet, creates unique one-of-a-kind cents that collectors will pay enormous premiums for because they cannot be duplicated, and that uniqueness is what drives the mystery and excitement surrounding the 1972 cent, making it a coin that continues to surprise collectors nearly every year as new discoveries are made. And when you think about why someone would pay $6 million for this penny, the explanation becomes clearer the deeper into the minting process you go, because the minting of coins is not a perfectly controlled process, especially during periods of high demand or technological transition, and small misalignments or variations in pressure can completely change the appearance of a coin, and when such errors are preserved instead of being destroyed, they become rare windows into the mechanics of coin production, which is one of the reasons collectors hold them in such high regard. And with the 1972 penny we have a perfect combination of human error, mechanical limitations, and historical circumstances merging together to create a numismatic masterpiece, and collectors today continue to search through rolls, boxes, and jars of pennies hoping to find even a lesser double die variety because they know the potential is enormous. And although many examples are worn, scratched, or damaged from circulation, even a moderately worn coin with strong doubling can still command impressive prices, proving that you don't need perfect condition for it to be valuable, although perfection is what drives that $6 million tier. And as we explore deeper into the possibilities of what makes the 1972 cent so incredibly valuable, we also consider repunched mint marks, especially on the Denver minted examples, where the D mint mark was hand-punched and occasionally ended up slightly misaligned, doubled, or tripled. And although repunched mint marks are not quite as valuable as the major double die obverse, they still attract significant collector interest, and the presence of these varieties shows just how much inconsistency existed during production in that era. And another fascinating detail lies in the planchet errors, where coins might have been struck on slightly underweight or overweight copper blanks, planchets with lamination flaws, foreign planchets from neighboring denominations, or even leftover planchets from other coins that were accidentally fed into the presses, and coins struck on foreign planchets, like the ones intended for cents minted for other countries using similar machines, are among the rarest finds and can instantly multiply the value of the coin. And these errors sometimes result in a different color, thickness, or weight that only the most observant collectors notice, adding another exciting dimension to searching 1972 cents. And as we continue unraveling the complexity of this coin's next 1973 D1 cent coin, and thank you for joining me again on this amazing journey into the world of rare coins, unbelievable discoveries, and hidden treasures that could be sitting right now in your pocket change. And today we are diving into one of the most incredible stories you will ever hear in the world of numismatics. A story centered around a coin most people would glance at for half a second before tossing it aside, unaware that this tiny and ordinary-looking coin has the potential to be worth up to $5 million because of its astonishing errors, shocking minting mistakes, and extremely rare variations that make the 1973 D1 cent far more valuable than anyone could have imagined. And as we begin this deep exploration, it's important to understand that what makes this coin so special is not just one error, not just a minor flaw or simple misprint, but a fascinating range of possibilities that emerged during the minting process in 1973, a year when the Denver Mint was under enormous production pressure, working with equipment that had already seen years of heavy use, dealing with fluctuating metal demands, and operating during a time when die maintenance, hubbing procedures, and quality control systems were not as advanced as today, which created the perfect conditions for an explosion of different errors, each one capable of dramatically increasing the value of the coin. And collectors today continue to search every 1973 penny they can find because the possibilities are endless and the rewards can be life-changing. And as we go deeper into this story, you will see exactly why a coin costing only 1 cent to produce can now be valued at $5 million at auction, which is a number driven by rarity, demand, visual impact, historical importance, condition, and the presence of dramatic mint errors that transform an ordinary coin into a treasure unlike anything else. And to understand how this value is even possible, we must begin by looking at one of the most famous and sought-after errors connected to the 1973 cent, the double die obverse and double die reverse varieties, which occur when the engraving hub shifts slightly between impressions, causing the letters, numbers, and design elements to appear duplicated, shadowed, or thickened. And although the 1973 double dies are not as widely known as some earlier or later examples, the ones that do exist can display dramatic doubling on Liberty, the date, and features of Lincoln's portrait, and these coins can be incredibly valuable on their own, but when a coin shows bold, unmistakable doubling and appears in gem or near gem condition, its value can skyrocket to a level that shocks collectors. And this is only the beginning, because the 1973 penny is known for a huge variety of striking errors, including off-center strikes, where the design lands heavily to one side leaving part of the coin blank, and off-center errors can be extremely valuable depending on how far the strike is shifted, especially when the date is still visible, allowing the coin to be authenticated and attributed to the year. And the Denver Mint produced millions of cents in 1973, so even a tiny error that slips through the cracks becomes rare simply because the mint's quality control was generally strict enough to catch major flaws, which makes the survivors even more valuable. And another possibility includes broad strikes, which occur when the collar fails to secure the coin during striking, causing it to expand outward in a wider than normal shape. And these broad-struck cents often display full details with unusual rims, making them highly desirable to collectors who appreciate unique minting anomalies. And we must also discuss clipped planchets, where the metal blank is accidentally cut too close to the edge of the sheet, creating curved or straight missing sections that dramatically increase value, especially when combined with other errors. And then we have die cracks and cuds, which result from the die itself fracturing or breaking during production, leaving raised lines or large raised blobs where the design is missing. And 1973 examples with large die cuds can be incredibly valuable because they show a dramatic structural failure of the die itself. And when this kind of die break is combined with another major error such as an off-center strike or a double die, the value grows even more because collectors love unique combinations that cannot be replicated. And next we need to look at misaligned die strikes, a surprisingly common but often overlooked error where the hammer die strikes slightly off target, causing the rim on one side to appear thicker or the design to appear shifted. And extreme versions of this error can be quite valuable because they reflect a rare moment when the machinery malfunctioned in a noticeable and dramatic way. And one of the most fascinating categories of errors for the 1973 cent includes coins struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the metal blank fed into the press was not intended for a US cent at all. And during the early 1970s the Denver Mint was responsible for producing coins for several foreign countries, meaning it was entirely possible for a leftover planchet from a foreign coinage order to be accidentally struck with the Lincoln cent design. And these foreign planchet errors can create cents that are lighter, heavier, thinner, thicker, different in color, or even made of an entirely different metal composition. And these rare mistakes are so sought after that even damaged examples can sell for thousands, while high-grade examples with clear diagnostics can easily reach the $1 million range. And examples struck on dime planchets, planchets intended for other foreign copper coins, or even aluminum planchets have all been theorized or confirmed in different years, making the 1973 penny a prime candidate for undiscovered errors waiting to be found. And the possibility of such an incredible find is part of what excites collectors and drives the mythic $5 million valuation, especially for a perfect or near-perfect specimen containing a major double die paired with another dramatic error or struck on the wrong planchet. And as we continue deeper into this incredible story, we must also talk about repunched mint marks, because the 1973 D penny was produced during a time when mint marks were still hand-punched into the dies before striking, meaning occasionally the D mint mark was misaligned, punched at a slight angle, or punched more than once, leading to a repunched mint mark known as an RPM, and while minor RPMs do exist for the 1973 D cent, rare and dramatic examples with strong separation can bring significant value, especially in uncirculated grades. And when you combine an RPM with another major variety such as doubling or an off-center strike, the coin becomes even more desirable, and we must also consider the striking pressure. Inconsistencies that occurred throughout the early 1970s, leading to weak strikes, filled dies, or polished dies that remove important details from the coin, and while weak strikes and over-polished dies are generally less valuable on their own, they can become highly desirable when paired with other errors or when they occur in particularly dramatic forms such as missing details in Lincoln's hair or beard, or missing lines in the memorial on the reverse, and these subtle variations contribute to the enormous variety of possible 1973 D error cents, making every coin worth inspecting closely, and as we explore the reasons behind its staggering potential value we must talk about condition, because even the best error is dramatically more valuable when the coin is preserved in high grade, and most pennies from 1973 have been heavily circulated, scratched, worn down, or damaged in some way, meaning examples that remain bright, lustrous, and sharply struck become extremely rare, and when you combine rarity of condition with rarity of error, the price can reach levels far beyond what most collectors imagine, and in fact one reason the $5 million valuation is cited is because collectors are willing to pay extraordinary amounts for the single finest known example of a major error, especially when that error is dramatic, historically important, and visually striking. And the 1973 D double die combined with a pristine mint state grade could easily become one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered, especially if paired with an additional anomaly like a misaligned die strike, rim break, foreign planchet, or off-center error, and as we continue diving into this incredible topic we must also discuss the historical circumstances of the Denver Mint in 1973, because that year saw massive production demands and high-speed coinage machines running almost constantly, and when machinery operates at such high speed for long periods, errors like die deterioration, incorrect die alignment, feeding mistakes, or planchet loading issues become far more likely, and these conditions frequently produced minor errors that went unnoticed and sometimes even major errors that slipped through the inspection process, especially during busy production periods, and because the mint was producing billions of coins per year, the chance of discovering rare survivors among the masses becomes both exciting and plausible. Next 1971 1-cent coin, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me once again on this incredible journey into the world of rare coins, mysterious minting mistakes, and unbelievable treasures that could be hiding right now in your own pocket change. And today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and exciting stories ever connected to a small piece of copper that millions of people handled without ever realizing its hidden value, because we are talking about the remarkable 1971 1-cent coin, a coin that looks simple, ordinary, and unimportant to most people but that has proven to be worth as much as $4 million when the right combination of errors, mistakes, and rare minting anomalies come together, and the story behind why this coin can reach such a massive value is one that deals with history, rarity, production circumstances, mechanical imperfections, and the incredible demand from collectors who are constantly searching for the most dramatic and visually stunning mistakes that slip through the mint undetected. And when you begin exploring the huge range of possibilities for the 1971 penny you quickly understand why collectors become obsessed with this particular year, why so many people search roll after roll of pennies from 1971, and why this 1-cent coin continues to shock the numismatic world with every newly discovered error. Because the conditions at the US Mint in the early 1970s were chaotic, with high production pressure, aging machinery, manual hubbing processes, tons of planchets moving through the presses, and workers doing everything they could to keep up with demand, which created the perfect environment for all types of mistakes, and those mistakes are exactly what makes certain 1971 pennies worth huge amounts of money today, especially those rare few that combine dramatic errors with pristine, high-grade condition, creating once-in-a-lifetime treasures that collectors and investors are willing to pay millions 4. So let's take a deep dive into the extraordinary world of the 1971 1 cent and understand exactly how it has become one of the most surprising $4 million coins of the modern era, starting with one of the most famous and valuable types of errors, the double die obverse, which occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives two misaligned impressions of the hub, creating bold doubling of letters, numbers, and design elements, and for the 1971 cent, several double die obverse varieties exist, but only a very few of them show strong, dramatic doubling that can be seen clearly even without magnification, especially in the word liberty, the date, and sometimes the motto "In God We Trust," and these major double die varieties are extremely rare, and collectors chase them with intense demand, which drives prices up dramatically, and when you find a strong double die example preserved in high grade, especially in top mint state levels, that is exactly the kind of coin that can be valued at millions, because dramatic doubling is one of the most visually appealing and immediately noticeable error types, and that alone boosts desirability. And beyond the double die obverse, the 1971 penny also has several double die reverse varieties, though less extreme, still valuable when the doubling appears strongly across the memorial columns, lettering, or steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and these reverse double dies become even more valuable when paired with another error, such as off-center striking or planchet flaws. And speaking of off-center strikes, these are another major category of errors that can push the value of a 1971 cent into the thousands or tens of thousands depending on how extreme the off-center strike is, especially when the date remains visible, allowing the coin to be fully attributed, and the more off-center the strike, 15%, 30%, 50%, even 70%, the more spectacular the coin becomes, and spectacular errors are exactly what collectors want when they are willing to spend massive amounts of money on rare pieces. And moving deeper into the world of 1971 penny errors, we must also explore broad strikes, where the collar fails during striking and the coin spreads outward, making it wider and smoother around the edges, and these can be extremely valuable when the details remain sharp, but even more valuable when combined with a double die or off-center strike. And then there are clipped planchets, caused when the sheet of metal from which blanks are punched overlaps or is misaligned, creating curved or straight missing portions from the coin, and 1971 clipped planchets can be extremely rare when combined with strong doubling or other dramatic errors, and collectors pay massive premiums for coins that show multiple errors simultaneously. And this stacking of errors is one of the biggest reasons values rise into the millions. And next we need to discuss die cracks and cuts, which occur when the die begins to fracture or break apart due to age, stress, or flawed steel, and when pieces of the die break off entirely they leave huge raised blobs of metal on the coin called cuts, which are visually dramatic and highly collectible. And 1971 produced several known cut varieties, some extremely large, and when a large cut occurs on a coin that also contains doubling or off-center striking, the value multiplies dramatically, because collectors love coins that display more than one error at once, especially when the combination is rare and visually striking. And the 1971 penny is known for multiple die crack varieties, some creating spiderweb-like lines across Lincoln's portrait or the memorial columns, and dramatic die cracks can be extremely desirable, especially when they create unique shapes or patterns that make the coin stand out from all others. And now we must talk about misaligned die strikes, a surprisingly common but sometimes severe error, where the hammer die, the die that moves, lands slightly off target, causing the design to appear shifted or causing one rim to be much thicker than the opposite side, and when the misalignment becomes extreme while still maintaining a full strike, the value can increase significantly, especially in uncirculated condition. And the 1971 cent also has a range of weak strikes caused by low striking pressure, worn dies, or poorly prepared planchets. And although weak strikes are not always valuable on their own, they do become very valuable when they are part of a coin that also exhibits dramatic doubling or planchet flaws. And speaking of planchet flaws, the early 1970s were notorious for metal impurities, surface laminations, and incomplete alloy mixing in the copper planchets used for cents, and these impurities caused peeling, cracking, splitting, and flaking on the coin's surface. And dramatic lamination errors are extremely collectible because they show clear evidence of minting issues that were never meant to leave the facility, and 1971 examples sometimes show deep missing metal areas or peeling layers of copper that create striking visual effects, and collectors love dramatic planchet laminations, especially when combined with other errors. And next we must explore the possibility of wrong planchet strikes, which are some of the rarest and most valuable errors of all. Because in the early 1970s the US Mint was producing coins not only for the United States but also for foreign countries, and a leftover foreign planchet, slightly lighter, thinner, thicker, or made of a different metal, could sometimes accidentally enter the striking chamber for the 1971 cents, and coins struck on foreign planchets are extremely valuable, especially when the weight and size differ noticeably from a normal cent, and there are confirmed examples in other years where cents were struck on dime planchets or foreign copper planchets, and the discovery of a 1971 cent struck on a foreign planchet would easily make headlines and could be valued at over $1 million on its own, and when you combine a foreign planchet strike with doubling or off-center striking, you have a once-in-a-generation coin that could easily reach the $4 million threshold. And another important category to consider is double-struck coins, where a coin is struck more than once inside or outside the collar, and the results can vary from slight doubling of the design to dramatic overlapping images that look surreal and highly collectible, and double-struck coins that show major misalignment, clear doubling of the date, or sprawling images across the surface are some of the most sought-after errors in the numismatic world, and a dramatic double strike on a 1971 cent in high grade could easily sell for hundreds of thousands or even millions, especially if combined with another error type. And we cannot ignore rotated die errors either, where the reverse of the coin is rotated significantly when compared to the obverse, and mild rotations are common but dramatic rotations, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, are extremely rare and extremely valuable, and a 180-degree rotation is often called a metal alignment error, and these can bring in huge premiums, especially for older pennies like those from 1971, and next we must explore blockage errors. Next 1969, D1 cent coin, the channel, and thank you for joining once again as we dive into another fascinating and unbelievable journey into the world of rare coins, hidden treasures, and extraordinary minting mysteries, and today we are going to explore one of the most astonishing stories ever connected to a small, humble copper coin that most people overlook every day, the 1969 D1 cent coin that collectors believe could reach a value as high as $3 million because of its rare errors, extraordinary mistakes, and the countless possibilities surrounding the unique conditions in which it may have been struck. And as we move step by step into this deep exploration, we will discuss why this small piece of metal has captured the imagination of collectors, what kind of errors transform an ordinary penny into a multi-million-dollar rarity, and how the minting environment, die conditions, planchet anomalies, and mechanical misalignments all play together to create something unbelievably valuable, making this coin a symbol of both luck and numismatic understanding. And as you stay tuned throughout this long and engaging journey, we will examine every layer of possibility in the forging and striking process of a coin like this, and how one error or a combination of errors can elevate a coin to a legendary status in the collecting world, because the story of the 1969 D1 cent coin is not simply a tale of copper and die impressions, but a tale of timing, environment, mechanical unpredictability, and the human eye that discovers something the rest of the world fails to notice. And as we begin this long and immersive journey, imagine yourself holding an ordinary penny minted more than 5 decades ago, a coin millions have touched, spent, saved, or accidentally dropped under the couch. Yet among these millions of normal coins there are a few that slipped through the minting presses with unusual characteristics, unnoticed by workers, unseen by inspectors, and unrecognized by the world until decades later when collectors began to search, identify, study, and marvel at the anomalies that make certain specimens unbelievably valuable. And the 1969 D penny is a perfect example of how the minting process can accidentally create something that becomes a treasure worth a fortune, something that turns a simple object of small monetary value into a masterpiece of errors. And because errors on coins are like fingerprints of history, each mistake tells a story. Whether it is a double die clash, off-center strike, broad strike, wrong planchet, repunched mint mark, misaligned dies, or even a combination of several anomalies layered together, and the 1969 D penny is surrounded by intrigue regarding these possibilities, especially because the Denver Mint at the time was producing billions of coins, working with heavy industrial machinery running at high speed. And in such an environment, a small shift in alignment, pressure, or die condition could easily create surprising mistakes that go unnoticed for years. And when collectors today search through rolls, jars, or inherited collections, they dream of finding that one extraordinary coin like a 1969 D-era penny exhibiting features so dramatic and so rare that it becomes worthy of an enormous price tag reaching $3 million or more. And to understand what makes such a coin valuable, we must dive into the complexity of the minting process, starting with the die preparation, where the design for the coin is applied to the die using a hub, and during this transfer of design any slight misalignment or repeated impression on the die can cause the doubling of letters, numbers, and features, creating what collectors call a doubled die. And while the famous 1969 double die is widely known, the possibility of extreme double die varieties in 1969 minting also excites collectors, because even if rare examples have not yet surfaced, the minting environment of that year makes the scenario entirely plausible. And some collectors believe isolated pieces could exist but remain undiscovered, buried in personal collections, coin jars, or storage boxes that no one has examined for decades, and such a coin, if found, could instantly jump into the category of multi-million-dollar rarities, especially if the doubling is strong and dramatic, showing pronounced separation on the date, the lettering, or the portrait details. But doubling is not the only type of error that could elevate a 1969 D penny to such an extraordinary value, because the Denver Mint in the late 1960s was producing so many coins at such speed that other mistakes could easily occur, such as off-center strikes where the coin is not perfectly positioned under the striking dies, resulting in part of the design missing or the rim appearing uneven. And in extreme cases coins can be struck so far off-center that they become highly collectible, especially if the date remains visible. Because of visible date allows collectors to authenticate the year and mint, making the coin even more desirable. And another possibility is a broad strike error, where the coin is struck without a firmly seated collar, causing the metal to expand outward into an irregular shape, which is visually striking and highly collectible. And coins like this in uncirculated condition from 1969 D could be incredibly rare, since the mint usually caught such mistakes and removed them from circulation, but occasional pieces may still have escaped. And if such an error is paired with additional anomalies, such as doubling, die rotation, or a wrong planchet, the value could skyrocket. And speaking of wrong planchets, imagine a 1969 D penny accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a dime or even a foreign coin blank that mistakenly entered the system. And because the Denver Mint occasionally produced coins for other nations, such accidental crossovers are historically plausible, and coins like this instantly become rare treasures. And if such a wrong planchet error occurs together with a strong double die or dramatic striking anomaly, the value of the coin could easily climb into the millions, since collectors place immense value on unique combinations that have never been seen before. And then we have die cracks, cuts, and interior die breaks, which occur when the die becomes damaged during production, creating raised lines, bumps, or missing design sections on the coin. And coins featuring dramatic die breaks, especially large cuts around the rim or through major design elements, become extremely collectible because such die deterioration often forces the mint to retire the die quickly, limiting the number of coins produced with that exact anomaly. And a 1969 D penny with such a dramatic break combined with other errors would become even more valuable. And we must not forget mintmark-related errors like repunched mint marks, which were more common in years when mint marks were applied by hand. And during 1969 D production, inconsistent pressure or repeated punches could create visible shadows or doubling around the D mint mark, and rare examples of this can be incredibly collectible, especially when paired with other mistakes. And then we consider die misalignment and rotated dies, where the obverse and reverse do not perfectly align, creating a noticeable rotation when you flip the coin. And although slight rotations are common, extreme rotations are extremely rare and desirable, and a dramatically rotated die error on a 1969 D penny could catch the attention of high-end collectors. And if such a piece exists in pristine condition along with additional errors, its value could skyrocket into the multi-million-dollar range. And another fascinating possibility is a multiple strike error, where the coin is struck more than once, either fully or partially, producing overlapping design impressions, ghost-like outlines, and distorted images that show the coin was struck in an unstable minting moment, and such coins command enormous attention from collectors because they showcase the raw mechanical unpredictability of coin presses, and if a multiple struck 1969 D penny displays clear details, retains the date, and preserves the mint mark, it becomes extremely valuable, especially in higher grade condition. And considering the hectic production environment of the late 1960s, such errors are entirely possible, and then we move into the realm of clipped planchets, where a portion of the blank metal is missing due to a faulty cutting process, resulting in curved or straight-edge clips, and when such clips appear on older coins from the 1960s, especially combined with other errors, collectors become extremely interested, because clipped planchets reveal problems in the blanking process, and if such a coin also features doubling, misalignment, or other anomalies, its rarity multiplies, and then there are die clashes, which occur when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring faint design elements from one die onto the other, and when a coin is later struck with these clashed dies, unusual overlapping imagery appears, and last 1981 1-cent coin, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me once again on this incredible journey into the fascinating world of rare coins, extraordinary minting errors, and hidden treasures that could be sitting unnoticed in your pocket change or tucked away in a jar at home. And today we are going to dive into one of the most astonishing and mind-blowing stories ever connected to a coin that most people consider entirely ordinary, the 1981 1-cent coin, a small, humble piece of copper that, under the right circumstances, with the perfect combination of minting anomalies, errors, and mistakes, could be worth as much as $2 million, a figure that seems impossible for something that originally cost only 1 cent to produce. But when we begin examining the circumstances, conditions, and potential errors that could have occurred during the striking of this coin, it becomes clear how such a valuation is plausible and why collectors around the world are obsessed with searching for these rare, high-value specimens. And as we begin exploring the story of the 1981 1 cent, it is important to understand the historical context of the United States Mint during the early 1980s, a period of immense coin production, heavy machinery in constant operation, aging dies, intense pressure to meet production quotas, and human oversight that could never be perfect, which together created the perfect storm for mistakes to occur, mistakes that were often small and undetectable at first but which could, decades later, turn an ordinary penny into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And one of the primary types of errors that make 1981 pennies so valuable is the double die error, where the design on the die is accidentally impressed twice, slightly offset, creating a visual effect where the letters, numbers, or parts of Lincoln's portrait appear doubled, thickened, or shadowed. And in the case of the 1981 1 cent, collectors have discovered that some specimens exhibit strong doubling on the date, the word liberty, and occasionally in the motto "In God We Trust," and although not every coin shows extreme doubling, those that do are extremely rare and highly sought after, and the value of such a coin increases exponentially when the double die occurs in combination with other errors, because collectors prize uniqueness and visual impact above all else, and beyond double dies. Another major category of errors that can make the 1981 penny worth millions is off-center strikes, where the coin is not perfectly positioned in the press and a portion of the design is missing, leaving an unstruck area of blank copper on the coin, and the more extreme the off-center strike, the more dramatic and collectible the coin becomes, especially if the date remains fully visible, allowing the coin to be attributed to 1981 and confirming its authenticity. And off-center errors can vary from slight misalignments to massive off-center strikes exceeding 50% of the design missing, and coins at the higher end of this spectrum are incredibly valuable, particularly when they survive in uncirculated or near-mint condition. And then there are broad strike errors, which occur when the collar die that normally restrains the coin fails during striking, causing the metal to spread outward, producing a coin that is slightly larger in diameter, flatter, or with unusual rim shapes. And these broad-struck pennies are visually striking and highly desirable, especially when paired with other anomalies like double dies or off-center strikes. And we must also consider clipped planchets, where a portion of the metal blank is missing due to a misfeed during the cutting process, producing curved or straight clips that make the coin appear as though a section is missing, and when a clipped planchet is combined with other dramatic errors, the rarity and visual appeal increase significantly, making such coins highly collectible and potentially worth enormous sums. And the 1981 penny is also notable for die cracks and cuds, which occur when the die used to strike the coin fractures, producing raised lines, bumps, or missing elements on the coin itself, and dramatic cuts on the rim or throughout the design are especially prized because they indicate a unique moment in the minting process when the die failed in a way that could not be replicated. And collectors often seek coins that display multiple die breaks or cuts combined with doubling or off-center strikes, because such combinations are exceedingly rare, creating one-of-a-kind pieces that are considered masterpieces within the error coin collecting community. And another important category of errors for the 1981 penny includes misaligned dies and rotated dies, where the reverse of the coin is struck at an unusual angle relative to the obverse, creating a rotation that can range from a few degrees to as much as 180 degrees, and extreme rotations are particularly valuable because they are visually unusual and difficult to reproduce, and when combined with a major error like a double die, off-center strike, or broad strike, the resulting coin becomes a unique specimen that could easily command prices in the millions. And then there are double-struck coins, which are struck more than once either within the collar or outside of it, producing overlapping designs, ghost images, or smeared impressions that are visually striking and highly sought after. And 1981 pennies are known to have produced some double-struck examples, though rare, and when found in pristine condition, these coins can dramatically exceed typical values, especially when they include visible details like the date and mint mark. And speaking of mint marks, the 1981 penny also presents the possibility of repunched mint marks, or RPMs, particularly for coins struck at the Denver or Philadelphia mints, where the mint mark was manually punched into the die and occasionally struck more than once, creating a shadow or doubled effect that is highly collectible. And when an RPM occurs alongside other major errors, it contributes significantly to the overall value of the coin, sometimes pushing it toward the multi-million-dollar range. And we must not overlook planchet errors, including wrong planchets, laminations, incomplete alloy mixtures, or surface imperfections caused by debris, impurities, or misaligned metal sheets, because such flaws can produce coins with peeling, cracking, flaking, or missing sections of metal. And dramatic examples from 1981 are extremely rare and highly sought after, especially when the coin remains in excellent condition, and in some cases, accidental strikes on foreign planchets or metal blanks intended for other denominations create entirely unique coins that collectors consider priceless, because these coins are essentially one-of-a-kind, representing a moment in minting history that could never be intentionally replicated. And then there are blockage errors, where a coin becomes stuck to the die and impresses a mirror image on the next coin struck, producing a ghostly, reversed, or ink-used design that is instantly recognizable and visually striking. And while blockages are extremely rare for modern pennies, a 1981 blockage penny in mint condition would immediately draw the attention of collectors and potentially reach valuations in the millions, especially if it also exhibits other anomalies. And we also have to consider struck through errors, where foreign material like grease, wire, or debris comes between the die and planchet, creating impressions, missing details, or unusual indentations that are both unique and highly collectible. And when combined with other anomalies such as double dies, off-center strikes, or broad strikes, a struck-through coin becomes a candidate for the highest levels of valuation. And the overarching principle that drives the value of a 1981 1-cent coin to $2 million is not simply the presence of a single error but the combination of rarity, condition, and uniqueness, because even minor errors are worth significantly more when the coin is in uncirculated or near-perfect condition. And the survival rate of pristine 1981 pennies is relatively low due to circulation, environmental damage, and handling, meaning coins that show dramatic errors in perfect condition are exceedingly rare. And these rare survivors are precisely what collectors are hunting for when they search through rolls, jars, boxes, or inherited collections, always hoping to find the elusive coin that transforms a 1-cent investment into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And this pursuit drives the excitement, passion, and value in the market for error coins. And when multiple errors converge on a single 1981 penny, such as a dramatic doubled die, extreme off-center strike, large die cut, repunched mint mark, and even a slight rotation, the resulting coin becomes a masterpiece, a one-of-a-kind artifact. That is valued not only for its rarity but also for its visual appeal, historical significance, and the story it tells about the minting process in 1981, and the combination of these factors is precisely why collectors around the world are willing to pay extraordinary amounts for the right specimen, pushing the value into the multi-million-dollar range. And while the average person might see a 1981 penny as an ordinary coin worth just a cent, those who understand the complexities of minting